How do we calculate the return on bonds? The return on bonds is made up of two primary components. So let's let the return on bonds be R, and the return on bonds in a particular time period T would be R sub T. The return on bonds is a function of two things. Number one would be the capital gain. So this is the capital gain is the change in the value of the bond, and in particular for the return on bonds, it'll be the capital gain rate, or the rate of capital gain. This would be like the percentage change in the value of the bond. So we have the change in the value of the bond plus the amount of interest that you earn on the bond in that period. And of course, if we're talking about bonds, we're talking about coupon rates. So another way to think of coupon rates would be the current yield. So the return on bond is the change in the value of the bond, the capital gain rate, or the rate of capital gain or loss potentially, plus the rate of interest paid on the bond for that particular period. Okay, so let's first look at the capital gain rate, or really the rate of capital gain. So the rate of capital gain, so if we let PT equal the purchase price of the bond in time period T. P subscript T plus 1 will be the price of the bond in period T plus 1. Okay, so if there's one thing we know about bonds, the price is never static. It always changes. And so the price can either go up or the price can go down. So the rate of capital gain, so here we'll call this the gain for short, the rate of capital gain then is going to be the change in the value of the bond, or the new price in period T plus 1 minus the purchase price we paid in period T, all over the purchase price paid in period T. So essentially what we're looking at here is a rate of change, and of course if we multiplied this by 100, we would have a percentage change in the price of the bond. The second component in bond returns is the current yield. And we already are pretty familiar with the current yield, but just as a reminder, the yield is the coupon rate divided by the purchase price of the bond. So if we bought this bond in period T, the yield would be the amount of the coupon payment we receive divided by the purchase price of the bond. Now let's look at an example. Let's say that we purchased a bond initially in period T for $100, and we hold the bond for two periods. So in period T plus 1, so this is one period beyond the purchase period, the price of the bond has gone up to $110, so it's appreciated $10. However, in period 2, we notice that the price of the bond has gone down $5 from period 1. So we've had this fluctuation in price over two periods. The coupon payment for this bond is $10, and we know that if we divide the $10 by the purchase price PT, we find out that the coupon rate, or the current yield, is 0.1, or 10%. And this is not going to change while we hold the bond. So let's look at the return on the bond in period T plus 1. Remembering that we bought the bond in period T, so we're interested in the return for the next period, which would be T plus 1. So firstly, let's look at the rate of capital gain. This will be the price in period T plus 1 minus the price in period T, all divided by the price in period T. We have $110 in period T plus 1 minus $100, which was our original purchase price in period T, all over the purchase price of $100. So we're going to add this then to the current yield, which will be 0.1. If we do the math, this becomes $10 over $100 plus 0.1, which is 0.1 plus 0.1, or 0.2, which would essentially be a 20% return on the bond from period t to period t plus 1. Now let's look at the return for period t plus 2. So we'll look at the return for period t plus 2 is going to equal, the return in t plus 2 is going to depend upon the time frame of reference that you're interested in looking at the return. So we could look at the total return over the life of the bond, in which case we would compare the price of the bond in t plus 2 to the purchase price, which occurred in period t. Or we could look at the 1-year return, in which case we would compare the price of the bond in t plus 2 to the price of the bond in t plus 1. So for this example, let's look at the 1-year return in t plus 2. To get the capital gain, we're going to take the price in t plus 2, subtract the price in t plus 1, and divide by the price in t plus 1. Now you might be wondering why we're using this price in t plus 1, because we never actually sold the bond in t plus 1, nor did we purchase it in t plus 1. So how is that relevant to the problem? When we're calculating capital gains are often just gains or losses on paper. So if you invest in something in the future and you hold it for multiple years, in some years you'll have a capital gain, in some years you'll have a capital loss, even though you haven't changed the quantity or the number of bonds or the quantity of stock shares that you have. So the capital gain sometimes can be just a paper gain or loss, and that's what we're going to have here. The other part of the return, of course, is the current yield, which we have already calculated to be 0.1. For the gain, the price in t plus 2 is now 105. We subtract out the price in t plus 1, which was 110, divide by the price in t plus 1, again, which was 110. This becomes a negative 5 over 110, which is 0.045. Of course, this is actually a negative 0.045 because the purchase price of the bond, or the value of the bond, actually went down $5. So this will be a change for the worse. This will be a capital loss of 4.5%. Now to find the total return in period t plus 2, we simply add our capital loss, which was negative 0.045, to our current yield of 0.1, and we find that return in period t plus 2 is 0.055, or 5.5%.